I already set it up.
This is the Black Powder Podcast, coming at you live and direct.
Your salty tears season my life. It's the Black Powder Podcast.
This is the Black Powder Podcast. I had to pause for a moment because sometimes when I look at the screen, I see certain people and I'm taken aback. And I have I need to have a moment to like wrap my mind around what's really going on here. This is the Black Powder Podcast, the premier libertarian podcast. Tub, you're disturbing me already because you're sitting there like you want to say something, and I haven't even got through the intro yet. I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic to Tub real quick.
Tub. We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Say something. Say something. All right.
Blah, blah, blah. At any rate,
Tub's here.
He's gonna back out and come back.
Tub, go out, come back in.
Yeah.
Kick him out. Anyways.
As I say, this is the premier libertarian podcast with technical issues. We are still the only real libertarian podcast that has ever existed in the history of mankind. And I am one of your hosts tonight, the only real libertarian, as my moniker says right there. And if you don't believe that, we can box it out. You know, I'm pretty down for that type of stuff. And I'm joined as usual by my good buddy, the former Florida man, Eric Parker, Bull Liberty. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm sometimes known as not a real libertarian, but only by Marcus, you know.
But you know, there's a lot of people think I am the only real libertarian. A lot of people all over. A lot of people are saying I'm the only real libertarian, and I'm fine with that. I don't do impressions well, but you kind of get where I was going with that. We have a special guest tonight, and this is like I was telling them backstage, I'm using my SAT words tonight. This is quite fortuitous that today is the birthday, the 54th birthday of the Libertarian Party. And with that being said, I could think of no better guest to have on than the current chair of the Libertarian National Committee, Mr. Stephen Nekhaila.
How's it going, gentlemen? Happy 54th birthday to the Libertarian National Committee. It was conceived in Colorado back in 71, 54 years to the day, and we are living in a much different world. So it is an honor to be here with you gentlemen again. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. No, thank you for coming on. Thank you to Eric for reaching out. I should have, you know, we had a chance to slap hands at the California convention. It was a pleasure meeting you. We broke bread and whatnot, and you know, I was sitting at that table, and it was Spike, Lars, Larry, and Steven. And I was like, I'm the brokest dude sitting at this table. And it was horrible. Because I was like, oh, what credit card do I put the hotel on? While all these ballers come in with their black cards and all this stuff. And, you know, they're wearing nice suits.
Paying in gold and silver. You know,
yeah.
Segue
you know. Are you talking about when your snap got cut off?
You know what?
Snap benefits?
You know. Let's go ahead and mute Tubbs' mic. It was kind of nice when he couldn't talk. I gotta be honest with you.
Well, see you later.
At any rate,
y'all have a blessed night.
Indeed. You know, we have first comments coming in. Big, beautiful libertarian. Obviously, he's talking about me.
Well, I think that's a play on the big, beautiful bill there. You know what I mean? Like it's
so yes, he is talking about you, a big steaming pile of crap.
Anyway, for those of you who don't know who Stephen is, you know, our audience is mostly libertarian anyway, but for those of you who don't know who Stephen is, I would ask Stephen to go ahead and give a brief intro before we ask you a bunch of gotcha questions and try to nail you to the wall like all libertarian meetings inevitably end up doing. So
I knew I should have showed up rested. Well, that's why I'm drinking this, so I can wake up. But my name is Stephen Nekhaila. I am the current chairman of the Libertarian National Committee. I've been on the board of directors since 2016. Been a card-carrying libertarian, since 2014. I want to say, no, 2012, excuse me. Joined my county party, became a founding member of the Libertarian Party of the Florida Keys in 2014. Went on to join the Libertarian Party of Florida, eventually became chair from 2019 to 2023. So I've definitely worked my way through many different positions in the party. Been around for quite a while. Got to see a bunch of different things happen. Seen the tides, come and go out, and all the different things you could expect from in politics. So it's been a very interesting experience, and I'm honored to be serving as the current chair and take us to a better place at Grand Rapids in 2026. It'll be the end of my term. And my goal over the next several months is to just make sure the party is in a much better place in terms of membership, financially, and of course, effectiveness too, and what we can provide from the Libertarian National Committee. So that's been my goal this year.
Right. And real quickly, for all those watching, I posted the link to the lp.org. There's also a donate button on there that I would hope you guys can click. Reoccurring, one time, whatever you could do. Let's donate to the cause. One of the mottos of the Black Powder Podcast is put your money where your means are. So let's get out there and let's get this ship from steam power to nuclear power, so to speak. Let's get we need money to do that. So let's go. All right. Tub, I know you're itching at the bit. Eric has some good stuff. So I want to put Tub on the spot. Just to
ask a good question, or we're gonna mute you.
Yeah, well, I want to knock him down.
Just mute me then, because I got no. Listen, I got no. Hey, Stephen. So you and I spoke a few weeks back.
Yeah,
and we discussed this. What was it? 2 weeks ago, about the idea of having. Yeah, we on the show here. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Remember when I said, "Hey, can we do the idea of having all these straw polls and basically primaries inside the things?"
Yeah.
And then Steve and I spoke to you about that before I ever came onto the show talking about it.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. I'm not getting into it again. I'm just going to ask you this. Have you had time to come up with any more thoughts on it?
Boy, this is the first thought I've thought about it in a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you.
So that means no. That's fine. We're good. My question's done.
But I think it's a good idea. I think it would require a lot of coordination between the states to do something like that. And I think it would probably be something the Flip Committee would have to go through. I can if you want to float that idea and see how I want to.
Could it be something that some states decide to do and some don't, and they just kind of their delegates it's a straw poll. They can always change their vote at national convention last minute, and that's happened throughout the history of political parties at their national convention. But like a straw poll, like, okay, these are binding delegates in the straw poll that are going to go, and here's just, like, could it be state by state? Some adopt it, some don't, is what it is. You know what I mean?
So the idea for those at home was to do a straw poll with the delegates for the Libertarian Party nominee for the presidential election. It's a very interesting idea. I think it's something. Now, there's two parts to this, because I think it's a good idea, because normally when we have our convention in May, we're already so close to November, and even the other parties have a presumed nominee, and they go around saying, "I'm the presumed nominee, I'm so and so." So to have that would give them extra time. In our case, I do feel like, because we don't actually rig the game, it's really tough to say who's going to get that nomination, because it's like, I mean, I think most people were pretty surprised in 2024 with Chase Oliver being the nominee because, some people had different game theories as to what was going to happen and how it was going to occur. And of course, the night ended at 1 a.m. with the presidential nominee. And so one of the good things is the Libertarian National Committee, I think it was 2 months ago, voted on having our 2028 national convention in February. So wherever that location is going to be, we are going to have that earlier. So the nominee is going to have a lot more time to actually go out there and campaign, which means that most of the delegates are either going to have to be selected in January or they're going to be selected in 2027 and then submitted. So that's going to cause us to have to do things a little differently because right now you'll notice from January to May of 2026, all the conventions are jam-packed. So it's a really tight calendar. And as a matter of fact, if you're a presidential nominee and you have to go and lobby, introduce yourself at all of these conventions, you're going to go to 50 states or probably 30 states that are worth going to because you're not going to go all of them unless you're really hustling hard like a Lars Mapstead or something like that. It's going to be so tough in 4 or 5 months to hit all those places. But if you've got all 2027 to do it and a part of 2028, it's going to be a lot easier to fit that in, depending on how the states are going to be deciding to fill those delegate slots, which may be a little creative. But I think bumping it up those few months is going to make a huge difference. And really the presidential nominee for the Libertarians, I mean, it'll be great if we can get 5% and we get those federal matching funds and then we start to get in the big boy leagues and we become a major party and et cetera, et cetera. But by and large, the Libertarian nominee is really somebody who is a good marketer for the Libertarian brand, who can talk about the party and the principles and bring people in. I know I was brought in with Gary Johnson back in 2012. So I appreciate Gary for going out campaigning and bringing people like me into the party that have been here for over a decade and a half since then. But overall, I'd say that, bumping up those extra 3 months to give our guy more time, it's going to really be exciting, and it's going to help those down ticket candidates as well. So that might play into the factor into the conversation there, Tub. But I think it's still something worth exploring.
Excellent.
So two things. One is now listen. Well, I listen. You made me come on. You allowed me to speak. That's how this is going to go. All right. You were just calling me like at 5 minutes. Like hurry up, man. So listen, you're not going to call me right before time and then not give me time to speak. All right.
I'm sorry.
So two things. One is because I agree with what you just said. I think that we have to have good marketers of the party for our ticket. I truly believe that coming up, we have to have somebody who can go out there and say, this is liberty. And if nothing else, it's kind of like what Eric and I were doing when we ran here locally, was to kind of get the word out there so that way whoever comes next can kind of just not have to do all the work that we already did. They can kind of pick up and keep moving. Now, with that, I've been half joking and half saying, I said, listen, if we can get Larry Sharpe to run for president, I would run for VP with Larry Sharpe. Okay, so we'll keep that one in mind. But here's what I wanted to ask you.
You're saying we don't want Larry Sharpe.
No, why would you want to? Because you don't want to run the risk of this one.
Yeah.
Now,
I love Larry. Why would you want to do that,
Stephen? Because it's my way of getting even with Larry, is what that is. And I want to stick it to the party a little bit at the same time. Now, Stephen, if I remember correctly, you said you're not running again, correct, for chair?
That is correct. So when I came on as chair, I did not intend to run for chair again. I may still run for at-large in 2026. It's my current trajectory, my current plan, but I have no intentions to run again as chair. And
so what do you really want your business? At that rate right there, you only have a few months left, technically. So what do you really want to accomplish in the next few months? Okay.
So some of you guys may have seen in your email, but there over the past, well, let me bring it back a bit. Back in February when I became chair, I was basically hit with the question of what do we do with $15,000 a month deficits? What do we do with declining membership? What do we do with loss of morale? And so myself and Paul Dar, we met with a gentleman named Jim Babka. And Jim Babka, for those of you who don't know, he got into the party in the late 90s, early 2000s. Well, my vice chair, Paul, he meets Jim over at, I think it was Students for Liberty. I forget what they call it, LibertyCon. or something like that out in the Northeast. And so we have a meeting, and he says, look, we did this thing back in the day called Project Archimedes. Project Archimedes was basically a mailer campaign. We took these lists and we funded it and we sent them out and we got leads. And we went from a party of 10,000 people to a party of 30,000 people, and from an income of $1 million to $3 million back in 90s dollars. So we tripled the size of the party in about a year. I said, okay, cool. I think we're on to something. So he introduced me to a gentleman named Perry Willis. Perry was the executive director at the time and one of the architects of Project Archimedes. So we brought Perry on as a contractor to help us with the copy and the framework of what we call the Parity Project. So the Parity Project is essentially the idea of we want to be at parity with the Republicans and the Democrats in terms of visibility, membership, and electoral success within the next 10 years. Well, how do we get there? If you're in your 70s, if you're in your 60s, there still means there's time. If you're a young guy, that's pretty exciting, right? So the first step to getting there, Jim also introduced me to Sergio Serrato. He is of a company called Iron Light. Iron Light's a libertarian-leaning data company. And we know that there's 700,000 registered libertarians in the United States. That's in 33 states that have voter registration. There's 27 states that don't. We're working on we've actually partnered with them in a historical partnership to procure that data. We're also cleaning up our list of about 1 million people we've grown organically over the past several decades. So we're cleaning up our internal list. We're onboarding a list of registered libertarians, and we're going to be reaching out to them via text, email, mailers, social media, Google AdSense, you name it. And we're basically, these people are already telling us we're libertarian. We signed up. We've changed our voter registration. We're one of you, but you've never reached out to us. You've never contacted us. So these are the best leads you can get. Modern leads. And I mean, I know your like favorite flavor of ice cream. It's that crazy. So libertarians have certain things in common. And as we build this funnel, we can start to make profiles on Americans based on how likely they are to be a libertarian. Once we figure that out, we can go after those 27 states that don't have voter registration, places like Texas, et cetera, and start going after those people. So the idea is to bring people into the party, and we don't have to do much prospecting because they're already telling us they're one of us. So we just have to reach out to them, get them to join the party, use that to fuel all the other programs we need to fuel, like Project Decentralized Revolution, which targets local level campaigns, policy-driven focuses like Defend the Guard, et cetera. But truly, this is a membership and growth strategy. We haven't done anything like this in over a quarter of a century. And to be honest with you, so back in, I want to say it was September, we sent out a mailer to I think it was everybody who's donated a certain amount. We hit them with a very good message and asked them to give money to the party. This wasn't a part of Project Parity. We spent about $4,000 on that mailer. We got $40,000 in return. So that to me shows the interest is out there. We're just not asking, because in the past 2 years, we haven't sent a single mailer until then. So, doing the basics and actually reaching out to people. I've had some people contact me that were active in the 2000s. I had one person contact me that donated substantial amounts of money towards the original Project Archimedes. He's a big donor. He wants to come back. He's watching and seeing what we're doing, and he's excited. He's optimistic, and I hope to earn his trust. But there's other people like that. My vice chair, Paul Dar, he actually had 2 people show up at his county council meeting, or excuse me, county libertarian chapter meeting. And because of the Project Parity messaging, they were inspired. So I'm getting contacts from radio stations. I was just on Charlottesville, Virginia or South Carolina. Radio. So all these people are coming out that are libertarian leaning that see this, and it's exciting people. And we've only just begun. And within the next about right after the holidays, we'll be ready to actually put this thing into full swing. And I'm optimistic. I am very excited to see where it goes and to see what happens next.
That's awesome, because when you talk about people in their 60s and 70s, you're reaching Tubbs' audience. That's right you. There. That's what people like Tubb.
Marcus, you're older than I am.
So, Stephen, I like the Parity Project. I really do.
Awesome.
I think it's a great move. My concern is an outgoing chair that's not interested in running, which if you stay on with at large, maybe you'll make sure that. I feel like so many times, like you get a new chair and they try and reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? Or they come up with an idea that's already existed and they just give it a new name. And then, but everything starts over. You know what I mean? And then we're using a new software program for getting this work done. Does that make sense? Like,
right.
How do we make sure that whoever the new incoming chair is, like the Parity Project does, at least stick around for 5 years? I think we can get a lot done in 5 years. 10 years is great. But like, how do we make sure 5 years, 10 years down the road that this is still a main goal within the Libertarian Party?
Well, I know there's been a few announcements for chair. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think it's important for constituents to ask the question, do you support Project Archimedes, aka the Parity Project, and do you want to see it continue forward? Because what I can tell you is when I talk to staff, and we've got amazing staff members. I mean, these are the folks that are working 50 plus hours a week for the party. I just do it part-time, sometimes full-time, it feels like, but you know, these folks are getting paid to work 50 plus hours a week. They're putting all their talent and skills and heart and soul into this, and they're making things happen. They've basically cleared out their whole schedule to just focus on this project, because without fundraising and growth right now, you know, the party's not going to last forever. So growth, having a growth mindset is so important. Everybody's bought into it. I think the team is really bought into this, and that's very important to me. So I think from a staff perspective and from an executive director perspective, that continuity lives on. However, I think it's also important from a board perspective to understand how important it is, because the original Project Archimedes, once we had that tripling of membership and money, they said, that's good enough. We're done. We did the thing. You know, let's do something else now. Let's try something new. And that effectively killed Archimedes for 25 years. So it's important that that doesn't happen again. I think this has to be a permanent part of what we do, because let's face it, if we're not growing, you know, what's the point? We can't all be the ones doing this forever. We're all getting older. We're all getting, you know, we're putting our work. We need that next generation to keep coming in and refreshing. You know, you have to have that piss and vinegar to come in and keep going along with what's working, right? So I think from a perspective of, I think constituents need to be very careful about who they elect on the board, period. They should be professionals. They should be people who are, you know, I don't want the good activists. Being a good activist is great when you're doing activist stuff. It's not a good trait to be a good activist board member. You have to know numbers. You got to, you know, be able to make decisions. You have to be able to be project minded. Different personalities are great. If I had it my way, I would have a board full of venture capitalists and startup people. That would be my whole board, right? And I'm not saying we have a bad board now. We've got some really talented people on our board. But I think for the next chair, whoever it is, I will be running again as at large. I fully intend that my next 2 years, if reelected in 2026, will be to make sure the Parity Project lives on, and also to use it'll be 10 years in 2026, 10 years worth of experience in the LNC to help facilitate things forward, as well as my business experience as well.
So, wait, so are you running, or are you?
I'm running, but not for chair. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did you nod off? Good Lord! Listen, no, I know at your ages are long days, but you already covered this.
I am the average libertarian, adult ADD, and got a little bit of the tism. So bear with me as we go through this process.
Andy was hitting the THC before this.
That is horse pucky. So you cannot prove that whatsoever. At any rate,
it's legal there. It's legal.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what do you think happened between Gary Johnson and Chase Oliver in the Libertarian Party? Because we went from 4.3 something million votes to just under 800,000 votes in that time frame. So what happened to the party?
I think that's a good question. I think number one, I think Gary Johnson was more of a, well, I know back then it was actually really interesting. You had John McAfee, you had Austin Peterson, you had Furman Supreme. I don't remember who else was running back then. Forgive me. But then you had Gary Johnson. And I think Gary Johnson was a universally very popular candidate. I think he won in the first round, second round. I don't exactly remember, but he won pretty much up front, right? His running mate, not so much. I think Bill Weld was very controversial.
Yeah,
but
he was
one
bad
thing
choice.
for what I will say positively about Bill Weld, if there's anything I can say positively about him, it's that he promised to bring in $10 million into the Gary Johnson campaign, and he did. So they were able to raise $10 million plus or minus, maybe a bit more. They're both governors, ex-Republican governors in their respective states. So they had the media. They had a well-run campaign. I mean, they, with $10 million, you can do a lot. And they were able to get about 3.5%, 4%. And so with Chase Oliver, you had a candidate who was elected in a contentious internal election. So a lot of people were intent on casting down on his legitimacy and his campaign. I think that didn't necessarily help him. And on top of that, if we're being honest with ourselves, the campaign, how much money do they raise? So that's always going to be a factor. I don't care what anybody says, but money makes a difference. And then the third thing is the weather of that electoral season is you had Bobby Kennedy Jr. Running as an independent. I mean, he got more votes than we did in states where he was basically endorsing Trump at that point because he had a seat at the cabinet. He was simply, don't vote for me. But that last name of Kennedy makes a big difference. And people were intent in voting for Bobby Kennedy regardless. Let's see. So you had, Trump basically trying to, and I'll give it to Trump. What Trump did was not only did he come to our convention, but he was campaigning on libertarian support. I'm a Coptic Orthodox Christian, which basically means I'm Egyptian Orthodox. Coptic means Egyptian. So he was sending out tweets saying the Coptic Orthodox Christian community should vote for me because I support their conservative values. I don't think a politician has ever tried to get votes from the Coptic community. We're not that many. There's not that many of us. And so he went out and he looked at every single sect of society he could, and he really tried to tailor his message to them, which was very smart politically. And so, I think from, depending on the state, we placed, third, fourth, or fifth. So it was just not a good election year for us for a lot of reasons. I know in 2022 we did a bit better. We got a couple percent of the vote. 2016 was a shining year. I'd have to look back at previous years, but it's been super, super low. It's been a little bit higher, but I think that the possibility is definitely there. When you have two unpopular candidates, the Libertarian Party has a big chance to be relevant. And once we get that 5%, we can get that federal matching funds, which means if we put in, 10 mil, they give us 10 mil. People are going to debate whether or not we should do it, take the money from the feds. I think it's us getting our money back personally.
Yep.
All the money we've spent on ballot access over the
Absolutely,
past 50 years.
yes.
Right there. That's what I always say. They're always like, we should do it. I'm like, why? It's just our money back again. So let's just take advantage of what they're taking from us anyway.
And quite frankly, the amount of money we spend petitioning for ballot access and the signature, in some states, it's $10 a sig. So if you need 10,000 signatures within a 2-month period, or whatever it is, like I think in New York, you need about 15,000 SIGs within 60 days. I forget, it might be different. New York is very complex. You're going to be paying $10 a SIG. It used to be $3 a SIG. So the barrier of entry is getting higher and higher. For instance, if you're running for, and this was the case years ago, I don't know if it still is now, but if you're running as a libertarian in Tennessee, you need 500 signatures if you're a Republican or Democrat. But if you're a libertarian, you need something like 1% of the last gubernatorial election, which could be thousands. And so, I mean, in Texas, back in 2020, they changed the law last minute. The Democrats successfully sued the Greens off the ballot. The Republicans tried to sue us off the ballot, but failed because they waited too long. So every state's different, but it's very costly. We're the best at succeeding. We have, closest to 50 state ballot access. We got to get New York back. We're intent to, I think, with Governor Sharp, we'll have that ballot access back. If we lose ballot access in Ohio, it'll cost us $1 million to get back. We've been able to maintain ballot access there. If we don't maintain that 3% threshold, we lose it. So every state is different. It's extremely costly. So I say all that to say that, and that's something we can talk about as well. But if we ever get that 5% federal matching funds, I say we ought to take it. I think it'd be unwise not to. We may have to take a shower afterwards, but quite frankly, I think we deserve it at that point.
So it is there, and I'm not asking for you to endorse a presidential candidate right now. But is there big enough names still active within the Libertarian Party or close to being active within the Libertarian Party that could pull in 5%? And I guess, like, is Gary Johnson-esque folks still hanging around? And if so, are they just waiting for the party to get their act together? What's going on?
I think Justin Amash would make a great candidate in 2028 if he decides to run. And that's an if he doesn't decide to do something else, or depending on who he wouldn't be a prime. But I would assume, just, hear me out. I think the way Thomas Massey's going about things, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to run for president in 2028. I think he might actually have enough support to do it. We'll see what happens. He may run again for Congress. He might run again for Congress. Who knows? So depending on how things shake out, we're not going to know until next year. It can be a very interesting election in 2028 because they're going to have J.D. Vance most likely running against whoever the Democratic nominee is. It's probably going to be Gavin.
Gavin Newsom.
No,
yeah,
no, hell
yeah.
no. I think Mark Kelly.
Hey, now you can support him on a national ticket instead of just having to do it in state.
Tub, I don't want to have to cuss you out because we try to refrain from cussing, but you're getting pretty close. If you're feeling me whatsoever with Newsom.
Listen, I remember you with your really tight Gavin Newsom shirt.
Hold on, let me mute his mic. But James Tallarico and Mark Kelly, I think, are the best Democratic candidates because we're still a center-right nation, and there's still a lot of that social culture war stuff lingering in our electorate, where I think those two could possibly be a contender for the Democratic nomination. And I think you're right with J.D. Vance. That's going to be their natural with Marco Rubio as his running mate. I would think that would be the ticket there. But Justin Amash, when we had him on, he said he didn't want to run for anything that he couldn't win. But I think we have to, as libertarians, look at that bigger picture of getting our foot in the door. Like when you open the door for cops, when you shouldn't do it, and they stick their foot in your threshold. That's what the libertarians need to be doing right now.
Libertarians,
so they can't close the door
like cops.
All right, so let it be known that he's supporting Gavin Newsom, and now he's supporting the cops coming into your house. Listen, you're full on California.
I was going to clip this.
Hey, and I do believe we'd have to go back with Justin Amash. There was the asterisk in there, and I think he said realistically, like, if he ran as the Libertarian candidate, I think he was like, he set a goal for like 15%, which is a lofty goal, but
awesome.
One that with the right running mate and the right circumstances. And I don't know, like that could happen.
I think if Justin Amash is going to run, sorry to cut you off. I think if Justin Amash is going to run in 2028, it's going to entirely depend on the Libertarian Party at that point. And what I mean by that is, we're going to be in Grand Rapids in 2026. That's his home territory. He's going to be at convention. He's going to show up. He's going to be one of our keynote speakers. But if the party is ready to promote and accept somebody like a Justin Amash, we're going to get a Justin Amash or somebody like him. If the party is in a state of just kind of doing this or doing this, if the infighting and the noise and the distractions take precedent over growing the party, being professional, doing the work we need to do, and showing progress, then these people are a lot less likely to switch sides and come over. The ones that do are typically very ideologically driven, and that's respectful. But if you're ever going to get, let's say, for instance, somebody like Justin or Rand or Massey to come over, it's going to take a lot. Because if I'm being honest, people, especially politicians, if you're from the business world, it's not as big of a hit. If you're from the political world, it's hard to, and people do, they switch sides to go back and forth. But to do that and feel a serious chance of winning or getting that goal of 15% or 5%, whatever it is, to be a real Ross Perot and shake it up a little bit, I think that would be phenomenal. But the party does have to be in a position, and I'm intent on getting the party in that position where we are ready to accept somebody like that and be ready for the next very contentious election, because I thought 2016 was contentious. It's only getting worse. I think in 2016, both candidates were pretty unpopular. I think Trump had a bit of a cult of personality this time around in 2024, but I think that's starting to fade. I think a lot of people that supported Trump originally, just already this year, we're already in December. So, I mean, the whole MAGA movement is pretty much, I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the original MAGA movement, very few people, that are actually supporting Trump right now for the reasons that they voted him in on. So I think there's going to be a wave of dissatisfaction coming in the next election cycle. And I think somebody who talks their language is going to receive a lot of credit in 2028.
I'll just say this. Trump beat 2 women. America is not ready for a woman president. So he didn't go up against the best candidates. He was the hold your nose and poke that Chad, as you guys do, as you people, to quote Ross Perot, you people.
Stephen Nekhaila's the Egyptian.
What do you mean, you people?
We're quoting Ross Perot. You don't remember when Ross Perot said that in the debate? See, I've been in politics a long time. And
you're a lot older than the rest of us.
Oh my God. At any rate, Ross Perot famously said "you people" in a debate, and it went all over the place, and everybody was like, "What do you mean, you people?" But Trump beat the absolute 2 of the most hated people in America. Hillary Clinton, nobody likes her. Democrats don't like her. And then Kamala, nobody likes her. I mean, so it was kind of that's one reason I was so disappointed with the last election cycle with the Libertarian Party, because we had a chance to make some waves. And I honestly felt like, excuse my French, but the former person that was the LNC chair really gave it to us without a reach around in our national convention. Giving Trump the floor. When have you ever seen Democrats invite a Republican that was campaigning for Republicans at the DNC, or vice versa? Nobody, or even does invite that.
A Green. You know what I mean? The Democrats don't invite a Green Party member to speak at their convention.
You don't, and nobody can tell me, "Oh, we have to open a tent." You open a tent to bring people into the Libertarian Party. You don't open a tent to boost another party's chances and then sabotage all the rest, where basically you just handed the keys to the Libertarian Party to the other party. That's basically, and they drove away with a whole bunch of votes and whatnot. And I get overly frustrated with that process. But anyway,
the only way, we're going off the rails here. The only way I would have done it is if he agreed to a debate. And I know we didn't have our candidate chosen, but that's where it's like, we'll give you 1/3 of the platform, but we're also going to invite Kamala too. And we'll have, and the Greens, whatever. We'll have an actual debate at our convention. And that might be something to think about for 2028. You know what I mean?
Well, there's this whole idea of a kingmaker strategy, which I think is very misguided. I'll explain why. First off, I don't think you're at you're sitting at the table when you're what's for dinner. Anytime you have a larger movement, be it the Tea Party movement or the Anti-Federalist movement or whatever it is, they tend to get absorbed into the bigger movement. So the Tea Party got absorbed into the Republican Party. The Anti-Federalists got absorbed into the Federalists, and so on. And so right there, anytime we start playing Republican JV team, it gets very uncomfortable. But more than that, a kingmaker strategy assumes that we have the ability to make kingmakers, number one. It's a fear-based strategy. It's hoping that the Republicans or the Democrats are so fearful of that few percent vote that we could sway them to take a certain action policy-wise based on the fact that we would endorse them or drop out last minute. Now, it's interesting because the only way to keep that act going is if you actually get that few percent of the vote. But after a few times of getting percent, 1%, less than 1%, whatever, you really lose that ability to say, yeah, well, guess what? If we're going to vote for you, I have a gun in my jacket. Well, you don't. I don't think you do, right? So another thing is, I don't see what candidate would actually agree with that. I think if Rechtenwald actually won the nomination, he would never take a kingmaker strategy. He hates Donald Trump. I've seen him on X. He's a great guy. He's very smart. He's out there fighting the good fight, and I appreciate him. I think there's so many moving parts. It's playing a game that is very nebulous, and so I think the best libertarian strategy is to keep being a libertarian. Because I don't know about you guys, but if you remember 10, 15 years ago, the word libertarian, I mean, I didn't know I was libertarian, and I was a libertarian. And then I finally discovered libertarians. I was like, oh my God, there's people that think just like me. This is great. It's called libertarian. Awesome. But now we're more of a household name. And so 54 years ago, when libertarianism, the term libertarian used to mean socialist in Europe. And so Murray Rothbard co-opted the term, and we basically took it back in the 20th century, whereas the socialists took the word liberal, which used to mean libertarian. And so we basically swapped phrases. Actually, it was a socialist in college that taught me that. And so nowadays you have Stephen Miller calling us out by name on X, saying how bad we are. And, you know, he would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky kids. So the word libertarian it's growing. It's a part of the vernacular. More and more people describe themselves as libertarian. I was reading McConaughey's book Green Lights, and he described himself as a libertarian. So the term is getting around. It's starting to be used. It's starting to be used in a politically correct sense as well. And so I think when I see libertarians running for office, you tend to see those policies being adopted by opposition because they see there's a market for that policy. So when we talk about ending taxes on properties because you're just renting your house from the government, all of a sudden Ron DeSantis and the GOP in Tallahassee are saying, yeah, there's a market to end property taxes in Florida. When we talk about ending the war on drugs, it starts to become a mainstream thing. When we talk about X, Y, and Z issues, we start to see it permeate the zeitgeist. And so I think that is very powerful. And I can tell you from a personal perspective, anecdotally, when I ran for office in Key West, I ran on a platform of several things, including for affordable housing, creating accessory dwelling units, and a few other things as well that had to do with affordability. And my opponents actually adopted those positions. So it was very interesting to see that. And I actually got to work with them later on trying to get that work done in the city. So, you know, just running as a libertarian, getting your policy positions out there, things that actually impact your community, things that can be done in that position that you're running for, those things do make a difference. And ultimately it makes people realize that, hey, I like these libertarians. They got something good going on. And as we grow the party and gain that power and respect and ability, then we're really going to be cooking with gas. And at that point, you know, we start to see those things and how a libertarian governs. But anyway, I've droned on quite a bit.
No, I want to get to this comment and pass it to Tub real quick. Louisville, Kentucky, this is just a reminder. In 5 days, you have a chance to put a very well-qualified candidate that is going to speak for you into the state Senate in Wendy Higdon. That's December 16th for all you Louisville and Kentucky people out there. And we posted her stuff. There's still time to donate. You know, give her a few bucks so she could do a few more flyers right before her election in 5 days. So shout out to Wendy. It was a pleasure having her on last week. Very, very well-qualified candidate. She knows her stuff. Tub.
Sup?
Tub, are you still here? All right.
Yeah,
Tub's got nothing. Next question.
I got look. I got them. They're right here. They're right here. Listen, Eric, don't be Marcus.
Look, if you fall asleep during the sermon, Tub, what?
Yeah.
Oh, listen. Yeah, it's my way to get even. As they do this to me, I'm gonna do this to y'all. Oh, Marcus, we're talking about inside a church, inside of a church building. So we lost you here. I know your dad was a deacon, but
my dad was a deacon. Yeah.
All right. So here's the thing. So part of our biggest issue, and I know we've talked about this, Stephen, is that when we were running here locally, we had to spend so much of our time just explaining what a libertarian was that we didn't even really, in all honesty, we probably didn't get enough time to explain what we individually were trying to accomplish. So we had that one issue, and I guess maybe I'm going to ask you, like, how do you build off of that? Because here's what you just said is something that Eric and I kept seeing, and it was so funny because people would keep coming up to us. You know, people who are truly involved in politics, not the casual, I go in and vote type of thing, the ones that kind of keep involved. I can't tell you how I'd be like, I'm basically libertarian. Like we would hear that so many times, like we actually have a guy, Reginald Blanc. Eric, you know him. So he was running for city council in my race. We were in the same race. And so he's a Republican, and he actually ran for school board. And locally, we did a forum. We had every one of the school board candidates at that time. I think for that election, I think it was 11 of them. All of them came to our forum that we put on. And it's so funny because Reginald Blunt, when he come walking up, now he actually won. He's on school board now. And when he come walking up and he meets me at the door, he goes, "Hey, Tub." I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, Mr. Blunt?" He goes, "Listen, I'm basically just a libertarian." And I always say that everybody's libertarian until it's time to vote. And I think that's our hurdle. Our hurdle is great. I know a lot of people, what you're saying is exactly right. They already think like us. They already want those freedoms. They're already against what the other two are doing. But I think we have to find our way to push them over to actually either join. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, and you might get mad at me for this. When we were running, I kept telling people, I said, listen, even if you don't join the party right now, vote libertarian. Like, let that be the start. Now, you might say, "Hey, Tubbs, shut up. You're doing it backwards, dude. Get them in the party." But my thing was, let's get moving. If they can start seeing people voting libertarian, I think we have a better chance of people saying, "Hey, wait a minute. Let's get in on this." So how do we get people, if you agree with what I'm saying, if not, tell me I'm wrong. I mean, but then you'll just be wrong, so it's not really worth it. So just tell me, how do we get over the hurdle? How do we get them from saying, "Oh, I'm basically libertarian," to actually being libertarian?
No, it's a great question. If you look at Javier Milei, when he ran for
Marcus.
I'm sorry, Steven. We had a whole debate on whether he's a real libertarian, Eric and I. So that's the backstory. But go ahead. My bad.
No worries. Yeah. No, he's interesting because I actually had an Argentine on X. I interviewed him. His name is Fairfield Aguirre. He's the modern survivalist. If you go back and look at the show, it's very interesting because he's from Argentina. This gentleman I interviewed, he was a friend of mine. And I asked him about Javier Milei. And the only criticism he had of Javier Milei is that he used a chainsaw when he should have been on everything, even like blades of grass. You're supposed to use a weed whacker. So he might have ended up cutting too much, which is an interesting concept. But I think Javier Milei did something very interesting because he explained people what a libertarian was in several different ways. Number one, he was probably the first libertarian anybody's ever met. The guy was diehard. He named his dogs Murray Rothbard and Mises. He described himself as an anarcho-capitalist. He hated the state with all of his passion. And it was such a perfect lineup because if he ran for like governor of Iowa, he would not get the same reaction of the people there. But running as the head of state, the president of Argentina, where inflation was like something like 1,000% a year, it was every day, probably more than 1,000%. It was going up. Prices go up every single day in Argentina. The only middle class and upper class there was usually by the parasites of the state, people who benefit, make money off of the government. Those were the big supporters of increasing the government there. He spoke to the people because there was no hope, and he was very honest. He said, "Look, if I'm elected, there's going to be cuts. No hay plata. There is no money. There's going to be an increase in poverty. But I promise at the end of all this, you're going to see prosperity. You're going to see wealth. You're going to see a better quality of life." And I was in the gym, and there was this Argentine girl, and we started talking about, what Argentina and Javier Milei, what you think of him. And she said, "He's great." He said, "The people in Argentina, they're traveling more. They're going abroad. There's more money." And everybody I talk to who's Argentine, they say the same thing. So from their perspective, what is it to be a libertarian? Well, there was this guy, Javier Milei. He was a great example of being a libertarian. And I think one of the ways that we show that we're a libertarian is, "Hey, my name's Steven Nekhaila. Nice to meet you. This is a little bit about me. Nothing to do with politics, but the way you talk to somebody. If I were to go up to them and yell at them and say, 'You're wrong, you're a statist, do you support the initiation of force, yada, yada,' people are less likely to be interested, even if they think you're right, which they're probably not if you talk to them that way. But being somebody personable, maybe a little enigmatic, eccentric is fine. That's pretty typical among libertarians. But being somebody who they I think is the first step of spreading libertarianism. And then, was there something else? showing them how libertarianism affects their life. So, coming up with a plan. Oh, I remember what I was going to say, but coming up with a plan about your community. What are the things that are actually impacting people in your community? Coming up with a few platform items for running for office and hit those items. I'm a libertarian. I'm going to fix, X, Y, and Z. We're going to solve the housing crisis by making it easier for developers to actually develop, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look back at Harry Brown ran for president around the same time as Archimedes, so the 2000s. And the way he described libertarianism was so graceful and so right on. You could tell he really understood the philosophy because he just described it in such an easy to understand way where it was almost disarming, where you could just listen to him and everything just made sense. I think someone like Harry Brown really is a great example of what it means to be a good libertarian communicator.
I like to put myself in all of those categories as well, because if it wasn't for me, nobody would know who Tub is or Eric.
Literally.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make light, because that was I felt the passion and what you were saying right there, and combined with the facts. And like I said, we had a debate on whether Milei was a real libertarian or not. I tend to think he's a populist, right-wing populist in a sense, with libertarian values. I don't dislike the guy whatsoever. But I was a little bit nervous about, especially in the media, when he came for the 40 billion and how they labeled him libertarian president, Argentinian president, gets $40 billion. Then he gets a deal with China on soybeans. And then he gets a deal with America on beef. And I'm like, Midwestern voters will see that and will have a negative connotation towards libertarianism because they don't understand the complexities of these economics and the economic state of Argentina itself.
Look, we can continue this debate if you want to, Marcus.
No, I don't even.
The good thing about that is Javier Milei doesn't have to worry about the results of the Iowa caucus straw poll.
Yeah, I get that. I'm trying to relate that to America.
The only thing I'll say on that is I was on a Russian TV. It was a very interesting experience.
You would. An apologist.
It was the weirdest thing, actually. So it's Russian TV, but in the United States. So it's like for the expats and stuff, the diaspora. And so I go on. I'm on like a Zoom call. I'm given no instruction. There's this beautiful Russian woman, and she's talking. I can kind of hear what she's saying. I'm just sitting there. I normally with these things, they kind of tell you, hey, we're going to start in 10 minutes. Maybe there's things we're going to talk about. You're going to introduce yourself, anything. Sometimes I talk to the host, whatever. This time, nothing. So all of a sudden, she starts talking to the camera. Her voice is very low, and she's talking in Russian, so I can understand it. And I hear this deep Russian accent, English, speaking person say, "Hello, Mr. Nekhaila. So recently, Javier Milei gave $40 billion. The U.S. gave Javier Milei $40 billion. Yada yada yada." So they were asking me questions about, what's the libertarian U.S. position on giving the money to the U.S. I just look, I don't know all the details, but we do not support giving money to any country. It could be Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, South Korea, even Argentina with this libertarian head of state. We're against it. I can't say I fully understand it, but generally we're against any form of state welfare. So that's what I said. And it turned out to be a currency swap. It's a little confusing, but I think Javier Milei did say at one point that, things are more complicated than anybody who's a purist would expect. I think Hans Hermann Hoppe is he's been a big whatever you want to call it. He's been criticizing Javier Milei quite a bit over whether or not he's acting purely in libertarian philosophy or not. So I'm sure there's areas where he's not. I'm sure there's areas where he absolutely is. But what I will say about him positively, regardless, is that not only has he basically ended inflation in Argentina, which would have seemed impossible to anybody before his election, but it's also created a firestorm around the world. There's a Libertarian Party of Paraguay. We have Libertarian Party of UK resurging just this year. And with the IALP, the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties, which the U.S. Libertarian Party is a part of, we actually just voted to move the headquarters of the IALP from Switzerland to Miami, Florida, because they want to be based in the United States. And so they're very passionate. We're a global libertarian movement. I was interviewed by the Libertarian Party of Russia. It was extremely interesting. And they look up to us. They see us as the most professional, the most money, the most members, the first. And they really look up to what we're doing. And I think it's a huge honor, and it's a sobering realization, because a lot of these people, like in Russia and Venezuela, Argentina before Milei, Cuba, they operate in conditions that are not only antithetical to libertarianism, but in many cases they could go to prison for life for being libertarian. So it's extremely, I'm extremely honored to be a part of this movement, and to have them say they look up to us is very near and dear to my heart.
Now, I wanted to ask you, we had talked in the pregame about both where you see Trump and economics. And one of the key factors on economics, which I think our money should be based upon, is gold and silver. And you had mentioned you wanted to discuss what's going on with that right now.
Yeah, so silver just hit $64 an ounce, which is insane. It was about $20 an ounce 3 years ago, I think, and gold was about between $1,500 to $1,600. So over the last 5 years, it's just gone parabolic. I mean, crypto, Bitcoin has gone up quite a bit as well. It's kind of gone through a little bit of a bear cycle lately. I'm sure it'll be up again soon, but there's nothing stopping gold and silver. And I remember when I was 16 years old buying silver for $50 an ounce. I finally broke even on that. So yeah, it is a little scary to see it, but because really gold and silver is just against the value of the dollar. So if the dollar is going down, then you're going to see that go up also as a hedge. So when Warren Buffett liquidated a whole bunch of money, they have a bunch of cash in Berkshire Hathaway, and he started buying gold miners about a couple of years ago. I said, I thought that was pretty interesting. But now I guess I see why. He saw through his crystal ball, and now we're up there. So the libertarians are right. Although it's kind of
again.
Yeah. Well, it's always in because every time you see the stock market crash to a severe extent, go look at gold. Gold always rises, and that's because speculation and human emotions are dictating way too much of our economic cycles, where something physical like gold and silver kind of lift us up and provide a foundational platform for economics. That really goes to show you that this is I'm trying to say this as libertarian as possible. The capitalism that we currently reside in, the capitalist system, is not truly a capitalist system, in the sense that you can have all this speculation and BS, and it literally pans out to nothing at the end of the day. You know, because somebody fired a rocket in the Middle East, oil goes up $5 a barrel, and then what happens? Nothing. All it is taking more money out of the consumer's pocket at the end of the day.
So Tub just texted, said he's gonna stay out of this just because it's coming up on the end, but he's having technical difficulties. Steven,
right, cool.
wants you to know he'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.
But and I'm not trying to cut us short. I don't know if you can go past an hour, Steven. I know you're a busy man, but
he hasn't slept much too. Yeah.
You haven't slept much, but real quick, what do you think of Trump's second term? And go at it as hard as you can for as long as you can. Go ahead.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, no, let's talk about it. It's it's real interesting because I think I'd like to think I've struck the right balance between very fair in my messaging on Trump, what I've talked to him. We did a first 100 days in regards to Trump's first 100 days. And there was a lot in there. There was Doge, which was a big plus. There was deregulation in energy, which was a big plus. There was the Fort Knox, supposedly we were going to audit Fort Knox. Great. But then there was Ukraine. There was continuing to fund Ukraine. There was continuing not only to fund Israel, but also bombing Iran. There is ongoing situation in Taiwan that crops up every few months. Nobody's ever really sure which ways it's going to go. General saying we're going to go to war with China within the next few years. So the peace president who came to our convention said, look, I'm the peace candidate. Vote for me. All these promises, of course, you have the Epstein files, you have the big, beautiful bill. And almost most egregious of all, because I think it's, at least for me, most striking, is you have Thomas Massie, who's not willing to toe the party line. He probably follows the Republican platform more than his colleagues do in Congress. He's getting primaried by the GOP, and Trump is backing his primary challenger. So that all tells me that everything he said, when you hold his feet to the fire, he goes the other way. So either it was all a lie, or Trump gave into pressure, or he just said whatever he had to say to get elected. He doesn't care. I'm sure all those things are true to some extent. But one thing is very certain to me, was very interesting, is that there's a libertarian movement, and then there's a libertarian party. And a libertarian party is the political wing of the libertarian movement. And so a lot of the people that have been ride and die in the Libertarian Party, many of them voted for Trump in 2024. And so we're about a year in, and started about 5 or 6 months in, I started to see the facade crack on a lot of their perception of Trump. And I think it came first with Ukraine, tensions increasing. And then, of course, Iran was inexcusable, continuing to fund and protect, Israel. And then with the Epstein files, what's going on with the FBI and everything else, it's become unexcusable. And now with Thomas Massie, I think that's the nail in the coffin, because everybody loves Thomas Massie. Nobody doesn't. And so it's just gotten to the point now where, from the trillions in debt, the wars, the civil liberties violations, the big, beautiful bill, as Tubb is saying, everything, the Epstein files, it's just accumulated to the point where we're in kind of crescendo right now, where it feels like there's anybody who's really paying attention. Hey, what's up, Lars? recognizes that there is no, for lack of a better term, there's no sex in the champagne room when it comes to voting Republican. I had somebody in the Republican Liberty Caucus who came back to the Libertarian Party use that. But there's this, whatever they tell you is a lie. And it goes the same for each party, both members of the duopoly. So, one thing that unites libertarians and quite frankly, millennials and Gen Z is low institutional trust. And we're seeing more and more of that more than ever before. And it's the same reason I think you see the polls shifting towards the extremes. You see more of this rise in socialism, like Mamdani types. And you have sort of a rise in sort of Nick Fuentes, neo right wing, whatever you want to call it. And you have the libertarians right here. And I think the next several decades, or at least, coming up, is going to be the older generations phasing out, the boomers essentially dying, and then the generations, the younger generation starting to take political power. And with that, their ideologies are becoming more radical, because the younger generations don't feel like they benefit from the system, because they don't. And so they're willing to go for something that's more attractive, because there's the promise that it could change their life. Just like Javier Milei changed everybody's life in Argentina. They were willing to do that because of low institutional trust. And Javier Milei said, look, I'm going to tear apart the state. I'm taking my chainsaw to the neck of Leviathan, and we're going to bring the power back to the people. Well, in the same way, you see Mamdani winning. You see, all across the country, places like Chicago, in Portland, in California, you see members of the Democratic Party who are really communist and socialist people winning. And I think at the same time, you also see a rise in sort of this reactionary right-wing sort of nationalist movement, which is still a bit ambiguous what to call it in my perspective. But and then you have the libertarians who have maintained, our strength and our philosophy, continue to grow, and are fighting for that same demographic. So as we move forward, I think it's important for us to recognize our demographic. But yeah, I forgot the question. Oh, Trump's second term. Yeah. No, I think there's definitely a big disillusionment with Trump, especially for the younger folks. And I was talking to Professor Zhang. We had a really fascinating interview. I highly recommend everybody check it out. He accurately predicted the Iranian bombings a year before it happened, and he actually thinks Trump could try to go for a third term, which is a very interesting thought. I don't necessarily know if I believe it. He says he could run for VP and try to use the judicial branch to change the law to recognize it, and it could be like an Obama versus Trump and running for vice president situation. I don't know about all that, but I definitely, I think 2020 is going to be a very interesting election year. That's for sure.
Well, one, I don't think he's going to have the mental fortitude to run for a third term because it's already showing cracks right now. The sleeping during cabinet meetings. That's one thing I totally dislike about the duopoly is the hypocrisy, because you had Sleepy Joe Biden as the moniker for him for a couple years, and then we literally have Trump sleeping on TV almost every week for the last 3 weeks. But I wanted to you didn't mention Venezuela, which I think is one of the things that libertarians need to get out in front of, because regime change has never worked for the United States. It always creates different problems down the line. And that's what it's looking like the United States is moving towards right now. They did a very provocative move flying fighter jets into the Bay of Venezuela earlier this week. And it's like the United States is kind of poking at that. Yeah,
I shared something about like Venezuela. All I said is like they have the world's largest oil reserves on X, and some rando was like, "How do you know that's what it's about?" Maybe it was a reply to a reply, but and then literally we just robbed one of their oil tankers, and it's like, is it still not about the oil? You know what I mean? Like, or resources, regime change. We get it. You know what I mean? Like,
we're just checking to make sure there's no fentanyl in the oil.
Yeah, exactly. I said that. I was like, are they putting fentanyl in the oil so that we burn it in our combustion engines? But anyway, instead of our crack pipes. You get the point. Like,
and then
like we've seen this story, we've seen this movie before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Wag the Dog. What was that? Wag the Dog, that movie.
I'm just saying Iraq. You know what I mean? Like literally, we've seen this.
But before. I read today about the opposition leader that won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's already saying that she has a 100-day plan for leadership, and then 10-month plan or something like that for transition. And I was like, okay, so we're going to go free the Venezuelans from Maduro, only to put them into another dictatorship that is a Zionist pro-Trump dictatorship without the democratic process. And that's what I'm like, how much is the United States going to spend on freeing Venezuela when somewhere around 20 million Americans are going to have their healthcare premiums, this is my soft side speaking, just shoot through the roof because of failed government policies that you made people suck up to the teat of the government. Now you're going to screw them over. That's going to have economic ripples that leads to things like recessions.
Well,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say they're always going to cut that stuff first in order to fund war. And I think the whole Venezuela thing, because I've been thinking about this quite a bit, trying to wrap my head around it. Why are we in Venezuela? Why is there seem to be a new, you don't move these $1 billion pieces of military equipment just for blowing up a few drug boats, especially when Trump recently pardoned the president of Honduras for drugs. So this has nothing to do with drugs. If it was about drugs, I mean, the CIA, I'm sure, makes a lot of money off of drugs. It's not about drugs. It's about something else. And I'm not even 100% sure it's about oil. I actually think it's about projecting influence, especially in regards to Russia and China, because Russia and China are investing very heavily in Latin America. I don't think people realize it, and everybody knows this, but if you ever go to the Bahamas, to these nice fancy resorts, or if you go into Latin America, most of them are run not by Europeans or Americans, but by the Chinese. Yeah. And so if you look at the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa, The Chinese are investing billions of dollars creating infrastructure to connect Africa, and they're a part of that, the port systems, the infrastructure, etc. So I think the danger with letting the Venezuelans go east, Russia and China, and go BRICS, essentially, is that they would be the power center in Latin America, which could cause problems for the United States in the event of a world war, or just simply in the case of losing that sphere of influence. NATO has always been designed to keep an American sphere of influence in Europe. Right now, there's nothing like that currently exists in Latin America. So I think this is less about, it has nothing to do with drugs. I think it's only partially about oil and minerals, which of course the U.S. would benefit from if they backed regime change in Venezuela. But I think this all has to do with getting somebody, could even be a dictator, who is pro-American, pro-West, in there, tell the Russians and the Chinese to get out of there, and essentially keep that sphere of influence in Latin America. That's what I think this is all about. If I had to bet, that would be what makes the most sense to me.
Was the Monroe Doctrine and Project 2020? What was that project everybody was afraid of? That's actually
2025 or something.
2020 Project 2025. So this is the modern, for me, this is the modern day Monroe Doctrine. For those of you that are history buffs, go look that up, and that's what I think Venezuela is. But Eric, you had a question for him as we begin to wrap this up?
No, I was going to say, great time here tonight with you, Stephen. I know we've went over an hour, so I want to, unless there's any pressing issues we didn't cover that you want to talk about, I want to leave with this one question, and I kind of mentioned to you beforehand. I've been listening to a lot of Milton Friedman lately. His Free to Choose seminars, they're on YouTube. Everybody wants to look them up. Pretty interesting stuff. I get it that he dabbled in the GOP, but he called himself a libertarian. Do we have anyone left in the party that has the level of influence that he had when he was around? Do we currently have that in the United States? Javier Milei might be the exception for Latin America, but here in the United States, do we have somebody with that, or is it a different landscape now? If you could answer that, and then sure, that's it.
Well, I was thinking about trying to get Javier Milei to come to a convention, but because he's currently head of state, he's not allowed to speak in American political conventions. But I could probably get somebody from the Libertarian Avanza Party to come and speak. I mean, right now, the libertarian philosophy still has many of its original thinkers and founders alive. Thomas Sowell I think he's 93, 95 years old. He's still alive. Hans Hermann Hoppe, who I understand is very controversial, but he is very smart, is still alive. Walter Block, who I respect highly. I was actually just debating him about Palestine and Israel last week, is still alive. Stefan Kinsella is on our judicial committee. He's been big on IP. There's all these thinkers of different levels who, at least are either famous for certain areas of the philosophy where they've contributed most to, or overall. Murray Rothbard, unfortunately, of course, is no longer with us, but he was somebody who was at our founding, along with David Nolan, who personally inspired me. Murray Rothbard's work is incredible, and he essentially helped found anarcho-capitalism, what it is today. So there's still a lot of many great thinkers. And when I joined the party back in 2012, I was in college, and I joined the Rothbardian circle at FIU. And to me, my libertarian experience was more intellectual, getting into the philosophy. Everybody was a bookworm. They walked the walk as well. And you had some eccentric personalities, some really cool people. It was phenomenal. For me, it was electric. But for me, the Libertarian Party, or libertarian philosophy, I guess that technically wasn't to do with the party at the time, has always been highly intellectual, very smart. You have Austrian economic theory. You've got all these different theories that seem to work on paper and in practice. Not many movements can say that. The socialists have their own theories, both economic and political, of course. The Republicans and Democrats really don't have much to go off of. They're not so much of an intellectual movement. There's really not even a philosophical movement, let alone intellectual movement. What does it mean to be Republican? Do you even have to be conservative? What does it even mean to be a liberal these days? It's all very ambiguous. And I think it plays more on power dynamics and divide and conquer, and a little bit of column A versus column B thinking more than actual serious political philosophy. So I guess I see all that to say that there are some people out there that are probably really great to talk to that are still alive today. I have to go back to my bookshelf and just start looking at names and see who that would be. But there's a lot of smart people that are still alive today that are still contributing to the philosophy. And I hope that our generation and the next generation can continue doing that same thing and contribute to the philosophy and keep it growing and talk about new subjects as they come up and explore new ideas, both in terms of practice and in application. So
cool. I want to get to this comment real quick from Kenneth. He's one of the greatest Oklahoma libertarians. How can we reach more 16 to 25-year-olds to help them see what the government, the reality of the duopoly? Before you get to that, I just want to say in California, and I think there's some other states, we have smog checks for vehicles. And my son just graduated from college. He's going out there in the world, getting a job, taking care of business. I said, hey, you got to go get your truck smog checked. So he goes and gets it, and he comes back with the paperwork. He's like, Dad, what do I do with this? Do I show this to a cop if he pulls me over? And I'm like, no, you don't have to worry about nothing about that. You just saw what socialism does. Because here in California, I mean, when I was a kid, we had smog alerts where we couldn't go outside and play because the sky was brownish gray. But they did efficiency standards on vehicles as far as the exhaust, and there's no more white smoke coming out of cars here in California, nor anywhere in the nation. And we don't have smog alerts anymore because cars actually burn most of the gas and don't create the smog as they did before. I was like, this is a legacy issue. The state of California does not need to smog your vehicle because they know the standards that they passed in a law reduce the emissions from your vehicle. This is a legacy issue where they're not going to give up this money, and they just stole $50 from you. And so this is why I tell you I don't like government. It's things like that. So how can we appeal to these younger generations other than making them go get smog checks and realizing it's for nothing?
It's kind of like getting TSA pre-check to get that fast pass to get your rights back at the airport. It's like, why am I paying money? I think, I was just talking about this exact topic actually last week with a few colleagues of mine, and I think it comes down to mythos. So I think that politics today, a lot of it is wrapped around the idea of creating a really good story. And for the younger generations and even the older ones, a really good story does a lot to move people. I think the political right has this story of sort of bringing back a version of America that may have never existed, the sort of tribalism and essentially a unicultural sort of society that's supposed to make them prosperous and the men will be in charge of everything, yada, yada. The socialists have a mythos of egalitarianism, of taking from the rich and giving to the poor. It's their greed that is the cause for all of our issues. And if we just got in power, then we'll be able to right the ship and bring in this egalitarian golden age. And I think the libertarians, we have to get really good at storytelling because we're very intellectually correct. I mean, I think we're right about just about everything, but just being right isn't enough. It's not enough to go in a room saying, look, here's some charts, here are all the facts, everything is cited, it worked here, it didn't work here. This is why we're right, and all the numbers make sense and all the maths. You're going to lose to the person who's a good storyteller who could tell an elaborate tale based on fairy tales, because people, whether we like it or not, and I think as libertarians we have to understand that people like to be led. They like to be sold something. Even if I'm buying a car, I want to be sold, what about this car? What's the marketing behind this product? So for us to tell our story, we have to be good storytellers. It could happen a lot of ways. And if you're a community leader, if you're somebody who's running for political office, let's say you're in a predominantly Black area, maybe you're in Chicago or whatever, tell the story about Black Wall Street, tell the story about, XYZ issues and how libertarianism actually impacted their lives in a positive way until the government came along and stripped all that away.
Yeah.
If I'm in South Florida, Miami, I may tell, a certain mythos based on the community that I'm leading and trying to get into libertarian philosophy. I think in general, 15 or whatever it was, 15 to 25-year-olds, the next generation coming up, what is their story? What's the world they're being brought into? There's not a lot of hope. The world looks like it's heading on a really weird path. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of friction, both geopolitically and here at home. The system doesn't work for them. So I think that's a story for young people that is appealing. It's how do we show them libertarianism in a way that appeals to their lack of faith in the system? And instead of wanting to install a dictator on the left or the right to fix all their problems, how do you bring liberty and prosperity back in your own life to self-actualize, and as the prerequisite for making your own life great? Instead of outsourcing your life to somebody else, you can be the author that writes the story of your own life. So whatever that story is, whatever that mythos is, I think libertarians need to work on being better storytellers and really resonating with people.
You're right, because the duopoly sells fear, and that's the number one product that a lot of humans will buy is fear. They fear that somebody's going to come take their daughter away and do things to her, or they fear somebody's going to come take their Tyson's Hungry Man meal off of their table and give it to somebody else. It's all about the fear, and libertarians sell prosperity. Libertarians sell the fact that we get the government out of the way, we can make things happen. And sometimes that messaging doesn't come across as logical, but I think the duopoly is going to do a good job of selling it, because humans naturally throughout history have rejected tyranny. It's like when we had Lily on here. What was her last name from
Williams? Lily Tang.
Lily Williams. Lily Tang Williams. She came from a communist country, and she hates communism, so she went to a capitalist country. And what I fear is there's going to be a lot of young people that are going to hate capitalism because of what they see the duopoly doing. And it's a one-sided system that favors the wealthy instead of a free market where you make your own path in this world. And with that being said, I want to point out we posted the link to lp.org, and there's, like I said in the beginning of the show, there's a donate link there. Put your money where your memes are, and let's try to get this thing pushing forward. I want to thank you, Stephen, for coming on and bringing the message. I'm going to leave you with a closing message right now before we cut this out.
Sure thing. Well, first up, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much. As always, head over to lp.org and sign up for our newsletter. It doesn't cost anything. You get to keep up to date with the Parity Project, what we're doing, how you can help and be involved. You can also become a dues-paying member for $25 a year. I would certainly appreciate it. You don't have to change your voter registration if you don't want to, but I'd love it if you did. So you can keep up to date with what we're going, support the work of the Libertarian Party, and help support everything that we're trying to do, bringing liberty back to the United States and being that centrifugal force for liberty. So thank you again, gentlemen. Follow me on X, go online. I'm there, and I appreciate having me on.
Word. Eric, you got anything?
Hey, Stephen, thanks for coming and hanging out with us. Look forward to doing it. I don't know when you will no longer be chair, so maybe we'll have you on before that happens.
Heck yeah, man. It'll be Memorial Day weekend. I'm counting down the days.
You're ready, huh?
Like, again, happy birthday to the Libertarian Party. Next week, we're going to have Sam from Junction City, Kansas.
One of the newest elected libertarians.
Nice.
Yes. And, we're going to take a little victory lap here. We had several candidates on. We had 3 that won. So I and Eric and Tub, we are taking credit for those electoral victories of the Libertarian Party this past off season. And
I think we're batting at least 500 average of the close to that, right? I don't know exactly.
Somewhere around that, but I just want to on the Libertarian Party, I don't know if we need to bring back the LPTV, but we need to make sure we start focusing on the social media aspect, because that's where the next generation gets their news from. The boomers are the only ones that are watching CNN and Fox and all of that stuff, like Tub. So one more comment here from a great friend of the show and a awesome libertarian, one of the greatest we have out there right now, Lars. Great stuff. Thank you very much. We truly appreciate that, you for chiming in. With that being said, this has been the Black Powder Podcast, the only and real premier libertarian podcast that has ever existed. And as we always say when we depart, and wish you guys the best in liberty, live free or die. This is the Black Powder Podcast, coming at you live and direct.
Your salty tears season my life. It's the Black Powder Podcast.